root servers and Internet Protocol addresses. Both of these are virtual resources essential to the functioning of the Internet. Just like radio spectrum, we need to agree on policies to globally govern their allocation and assignment. Now note the word global. The difference between these critical Internet resources and many of the other things we've heard are critical, such as electrical power and telecom infrastructure, is that there is an inherent and fundamental need for global coordination. And therefore, there is a new kind of governance problem for these Internet resources. Electrical power grids are coordinated at the national or local level or the regional level. You do not need global governance of electrical power resources. And in fact, there's very little a global forum like this can do about electrical power. But there is something that we can do about the critical Internet resources. In fact, to go beyond the dialogue a bit, we all know that critical Internet resources in the World Summit became a code word for ICANN issues and the underlying problem of unilateral control of Internet resources by one nation state. There are people who prefer that those issues not be discussed here at the forum, but that's obviously no longer the case. We are discussing them, and I'd like to thank the Brazilians and my colleagues in civil society for making that happen. And I think it's going to prove to be a productive discussion. Now, these issues are being discussed, and quite productively, within ICANN and the regional Internet registries. There's a lot of technical expertise there. But we also need to discuss them here, where there's a much broader set of stakeholder groups, not just governments, but others. And we need to focus on the public policy implications and not just the technical implications. So what are the issues as I see them? First, we are running out of Internet addresses. We need to develop new mechanisms that allow people, for example, to trade addresses so that they can be moved from people who don't need them to people who do need them. Unfortunately, there are people who have buried their head in the sand on this issue because of repeating old practices and don't want to make that change. Second, there is a new protocol, Ipv6, that would create more address space. But the somewhat alarming fact is that this new protocol is not backwards compatible with the old Internet protocol. And the transition to Ipv6, as Dr. Cerf indicated, raises the risk of severe economic and technical dislocations as we move forward. These are fundamental global public policy issues pertaining to the basic ability of the Internet to function. Third, we need to secure the domain name system. That means we have to define a new process for encrypting the root zone file so that it can serve as a trust anchor for the global Internet. And this reincarnates the continuing saga of who rules the root. By the way, IGP and some others are doing a workshop on this topic Wednesday morning. Finally, we have the creation of new top-level domains, some of which will be multilingual. And this raises interesting problems of global content regulation, the problems of national internets, problems about the control of language communities, and the problems of market dominance in DNS services. So in short, critical Internet resources are truly global governance issues. We need the forum to raise awareness of their importance and to develop consensus around globally applicable public policy principles for governing them. By participating in the forum, we do not necessarily accept the premise that governments need to assert unilateral control over public policy issues. We can develop new institutions that provide for more pluralistic, networked, and private sector-based forms of governance, as well as understanding and implementing the role of governments more effectively. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but these institutions are growing, they're getting stronger, and they have a new ethic of multi-stakeholderism, which is very important. So I would see, rather than convergence of the old institutions, perhaps a more Darwinian process in which the old institutions die and the new ones grow.
I'd be hard-pressed to object to anything that Milton just said. It is not necessarily the case that a medium which moves from, let's say, the traditional television world of broadcast or cable or even satellite. When it moves into the internet environment, it may not be the same kind of television that you thought it was before. People use the medium differently. There are different opportunities for sustaining that medium, for supporting its costs and the like. And so the regulatory oversight and structure for businesses that operate that medium in the internet world may be quite different from the ones that may have been appropriate in other delivery mechanisms. So I think that, in my view anyway, convergence does not necessarily endow any of the previous regulatory structures with any primacy. And in fact, we may see completely different kinds of media arising out of this convergence with internet delivery mechanisms. So I think, like Milton suggests, there may be a Darwinian imperative here that you either adapt to this new environment or you die. Okay, let me start to respond to the first question about the UN. A most dangerous question to ask in this setting. I would like to suggest to you that the convening power of the United Nations is evident in this meeting, and it has been quite valuable so far. Certainly the Athens meeting resulted in a great deal of exchange among people who did not normally interact with each other, and I suggest to you that that's happening once again in this meeting, and so I value that. I don't necessarily believe, however, that the governance mechanisms that have evolved around the internet need necessarily to move into the UN orbit in a direct way. I think that these new multi-stakeholder structures deserve some time to evolve and develop. We've had 8 years at ICANN, and I think we've got a pretty stable structure. So I think at this point, the value of the UN contribution is in the convening of these kinds of discussions.
Okay, you're asking me what I want to have. Yeah, I would like to see global governance institutions evolve and become stronger, and particularly in the field of the internet, I would like to see, I guess, some kind of translation of notions of liberal democracy into the global sphere, so that we have a constitution which limits the power of what public authorities can do, at the same time as it empowers a global public to directly select and control these global entities. So, for example, I was a big supporter of ICANN's original model, in which they actually had a membership which voted on the board members, and I was disappointed when they departed from that and set up more of a corporate self-selecting board structure. On the other hand, I know enough about history to know that there are powerful interests at stake, and sometimes good ideals can become warped in the implementation by the push and pull of politics. So this is a very complicated topic that, as you know well, which we could discuss at greater length at some other time.